moderator for this panel is Candice Springer, who's part of the core team that launched the WBUR City Space, where we are right now. And so she knows, we launched this in early 2019, and she understands the tension of launching a new brand space alongside a public radio station. And this is why we invited her to moderate this session. So please join me in welcoming our Launching a New Brand panel to the stage.
With City Space launching, we definitely have seen, that we're learning every day. We're iterating every day based on any number of circumstances. So my first question to all of you really is, what were some of the unforeseen challenges of launching your new brands? And in the case of Capital Public, kind of rebranding. Who wants to start?
I'll go first on rebrand. Yeah, we had this program in place for a number of years. And as Kelly said earlier, it was making us some money, and then it just dried up a little bit. It was being managed by a department other than ours, and we were hands-off until recently. And with the BizLab project, we were able to, in the underwriting department, begin to take a look at how to do a statewide network. Our very first challenge, I think, was figuring out where all the details were. We had a lot of history in our heads, but we didn't have a lot of paperwork that we could put our hands on. So we really had to start with the number one challenge of figuring out who's still participating in our network. And it took hiring another person to come in and help us do that. So we got a contractor in there to make a lot of phone calls, emails, contacting the people that we did have contacts for. In some cases they were gone, and in one case the fellow had died. So it had been a while since we reached out. Yeah. So it was our very first challenge, and a big one that was mostly external. Internally, there was a lot of conversation about how we want to move this forward from the eyes of an underwriting department, and how that integrates with the rest of our team at Cap Radio. Management saw it as an opportunity for revenue. It was pretty easy in that regard. Some of the other teams, however, were pretty booked up, and it becomes a problem of human resources and how much time do these individuals and departments have. So it was a good challenge for us to grapple with.
Rachel, what did you experience sort of launching the DCist as part of WAMU?
Sure. So I'm the editor-in-chief of DCist. I was before. Can I get like a really quick show of hands? How many of you sort of know the contours of what happened here? Because I can do like half of you. Very, very quickly, DCist was a digital website that was part of a network. Gothamist was the parent company. Long story short, the site was shut down, but in the span of those 10, 14 years that we'd been in existence, there had been a brand journey in and of itself, really from a blog into a professional news organization. Whole thing gets shut down. WNYC brokers the deal to bring back not just Gothamist in New York, but DCist and LAist in our corresponding cities. So we faced, I wish I had a better answer for unforeseen challenges, but there was a really, really big foreseeable challenge, which to this day we're still sort of grappling with, but basically was, how do you integrate this new brand into a new brand that has its own identity, that is well known in this media market, into a very different style organization that is even better known, arguably. And so the fundamental question that we had to answer was one of houses. Is WMU sort of the big house and all of its sub-brands, little houses underneath it that really feed up into it? It's not just us, but 1A is a pretty prominent example of that. Our local talk show, our national reporting project across Guns and America. They don't like it when you say Guns in America. The marketing problem in and of itself. Are we all sort of feeding up to this one big tent and we are promoting WMU as part of it? Or are all of those sub-brands brands that should be nurtured unto themselves and sort of, only tenuously connected to the big brand? And really it's a question that I think that we'll continue to grapple with. But one of the things that we did to figure this out was we sort of sat down with a lot of Post-it notes and we said, okay, what are the benefits to WAMU of being affiliated with DCist? And we made a whole long list of those. And then we did the reverse. What are the benefits to DCist to be affiliated with WAMU? And quick show of hands, which side do you think was bigger, the WMU affiliating with DCist or the reverse? Let's go with WMU. Okay, and so the other side, DCist. All right, it looked like you guys were about tied, but the first group was correct. We had a longer list for WMU being affiliated with DCist, which frankly surprised me. I think when I got there, I was like, you guys are WMU, like this is like the biggest deal. But what we found was that sort of the youth and energy and digital savvy. I was looking at the slide that Joan had up earlier about like what audiences want these days, and DCist really checks off a lot of those boxes in terms of speed, accessibility, hyperlocalness. And so we found that there was a lot of benefit that way, whereas the reverse was a little bit less true. There's certainly benefit to being affiliated with WMU, but there are also some downsides, particularly as we talk about launching a membership. So really answering that question was our biggest, arguably foreseeable challenge. There were plenty of others, but I think that's the one that we spent the most time thinking about.
So Tracy, you kind of had a similar, your Do 502 is also an acquisition for Louisville, and you guys decided to integrate your membership for Do 502 into your existing LPM membership, correct? And where did the decision come from? Because Rachel just talked a lot about trying to make that decision about whether or not to keep the brands distinctive. You kind of rolled yours in, but the audience is different, correct?
The audience is different. We decided to roll it in because we already have 3 radio stations, plus KYCIR, which is an investigative journalism arm. So membership oversaw all of that. So the people that listen to WFPL, they don't, they'll just donate to WFPL. So membership had a way to keep it all separated so they know who goes into what box. And I do not think there was a conversation internally about how this was gonna do. I think it just was Louisville Public Media. You're falling under the Louisville Public Media brand, and we decided to buy Do 502 because it immediately increased our digital footprint, which is something that we needed. So because I think this is what we're all grappling with as moving forward, is that everything's changing and shifting to digital. We needed something just to help us get a leg up in the marketplace.
Interesting.
But yeah.
And Rachel, why did you ultimately decide to keep the memberships for both of them separate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ultimately, we think that our membership program in and of itself is different and distinct. We think that our audience needs something different than WMU's audience needs. We talk a lot about there are 3 main ways of asking your audience for money. Subscription being, you give me money, I give you a newspaper or a product. Donation, which is really what most public media membership is, I give you money, I feel good about the world. I've supported NPR, I've made the thing I love happen. Yeah, you might be in it for the tote bag, but really you're in it for that warm, fuzzy feeling. Membership is something a little bit different. It's really belonging to something. It's really sort of a 2-way relationship. Our vision for membership is quite an active engagement. We are doing events. We're really talking to our members in the form of a newsletter, and we think that that's really necessary for our audience. Maddie likes to talk a lot about how there's a real megaphone to radio that you don't have digitally. You have 10 radio stations maybe. We have the whole internet to compete with, and we don't have decades of people really understanding this donor model. So we think that for our audience to be successful, we really needed to craft something that was a little bit different.
Interesting. Different approaches. So Lisa, for Capital Public Radio, what was really the impetus to decide to rebrand? Was it revenue, that you weren't making revenue, that it had gone stagnant, or I don't know. I was like, was there someone who was like, we need to change this,
Well, it was being handled for years out of a different department. I think I mentioned that. And so in underwriting, we were eager for many years to be able to go out and talk to people about our statewide network. When the opportunity arose, of course we would talk about it while we were out doing our jobs. If it came up and we were feeling there was more than interest there, we would have to refer it to a different department. So revenue drove the idea. Once it came into our department, it moved from being more of a grants model to more of a hands-on underwriting model, which required our rethinking of how we offer it. We felt that was part of the problem with the continued success, and once we broke it into 3 regions, boom, we had people's attention again. So we were able to find out during our experimentation process from buyers who are already buying statewide in California and who happen to just be friends and were willing to talk to us, thank you, that was going to be an important thing for them. Talking to them about our sort of one-stop shop idea, where if you can imagine making individual phone calls to 50 stations to get rates, to find out about copy, and then introducing to some of these buyers the NPR product and how we do what we do, it would have been a long slog for anyone who was outside of our network or our offerings. So it began to be more and more appealing the more we talked about it. So it seems like it started as a revenue idea and it morphed into a really good underwriting idea.
And talk to me about the 15 seconds of impact tagline, as I was calling it. I love that.
I love it too. Yeah. Thanks. We were in our workshops, and Lawrence was helping on that day. We were feeling, and we only have 15 seconds, and we can't compete with commercial, and some of those things that come up in underwriting from time to time. And I guess as he does, at least as he did on that day, Lawrence sat there and listened, and he went, "Why would you change that? That's what makes you valuable. It's what makes you different. It's 15 seconds of impact." And we went, that was our big aha moment, and everything started to fall into place at that time. He told us, you need more swagger. And from the whole workshop process, especially from that point forward, we were able to be bold, and swagger is the word.
And do you feel like that's attracting more interest from potential clients because you kind of are going with sort of the message, like what they should be projecting out to their audience?
It absolutely is. In our example of the Pledge of Allegiance that we use in all of our materials, it blows people's minds. They know the Pledge of Allegiance, they understand word choice by using that as an example, and you can recite the Pledge of Allegiance in 13 to 15 seconds, and suddenly they get it too.
That's cool. For Rachel and for Tracy, are there particular demographics that you're trying to attract with your new brands? I took a look at the DCist and WAMU at the same time, and there was a story yesterday about the new Wonder Woman trailer, and even the headlines for those 2 stories on those 2 sites were different. The DCist kind of has like a youthful vibe, a cheekier vibe. Is that intentional, and who are you trying to attract? And is that a way to supplement the WAMU audience?
So this is a challenging question to answer because I tailor the answer to this question to who I'm talking to, frankly. Because we have a reputation somebody once called us, and I hate this, so please don't repeat it, the millennial newspaper of record. And this is, I sort of alluded to this a little bit earlier in terms of the brand's journey of DCist unto itself. It started out as a blog. It was, the heyday of the early 2000s. It was a really different time on the internet. It wasn't professionalized. It could be quite snarky, especially if you know Gothamist, which really took that to an extreme. And we've really evolved over time into a quite professional news outlet, particularly over the last 5 years. And we continue to focus on being in the zeitgeist, being really approachable, writing with wit when it's appropriate, but sort of the logical extension of that, we're only reporting for young people, for newcomers, isn't true for a lot of reasons, and it hasn't been for a long time, but particularly now that we're part of public media, we see all of Washington, D.C. as our audience. There's only a very small handful of local news outlets in D.C. If you want to know what's happening in D.C., you have to take us seriously. You have to read us alongside the Post and the City Paper, and that's kind of it. There's, that's not it, but the reality is that our audience, like, people would expect to see our demographics skew quite a bit younger than, say, WMU's, but it's actually not that different digitally. Radio to digital it is. We're much younger, presumably more diverse, but this is one of the areas where digital actually has less data than radio does. So the answer is, yeah, if I'm talking to advertisers and they really want to talk about young people, I can talk about that statistic. It is pretty high, but it's not as high as people think it is. Our audience, our members, they span age ranges. I don't have the exact breakdown here, although Ted might be able to call it up in like 3 seconds. But it's a lot more age diverse than you would expect. So that's why I gave you a really long answer to that very short question. So, but the answer to who we're trying to attract is all of DC. We're not making a statement about having a niche audience. We really want to serve the entire city and see all Washingtonians of all ages, races, demographics as our target audience, which flies against some of the conventional wisdom about how you should be targeting audiences, but that's where we are.
Is it the same for Do 502 in Louisville?
It does skew a little bit younger, but when we talked about the personas, we did discover it's still a wide swath. Like Rachel said, it's not just one age range. People that go to Do 502 go there for a lot of different reasons. It could be the mom who needs something to do for the kids on the rainy day. It's the person it's Sloan who wants to be in on I want to know what's going on and what's new now. And it could just be someone just looking for something fun to do. So we find that there's a lot of people from out of town that actually use Do 502 that live in surrounding areas that just want to come to look, because we're in Kentucky, so there's not always a lot to do in outlying areas, so people look to Do 502 I want to come here and do something fun.
Yeah, people don't stop having fun at like 34.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, what to do with kids on a rainy day is a big aggregate list where people go to, like, what can we do? So it is an interesting thing to realize it's not just this, just because it's digital doesn't mean that it's young and single. We have that audience, but it does envelop a wider swath.
Was there any sort of brand confusion with your members? Did they understand that they're supporting Louisville Public Media as a member of Do 502, or do they just think they're supporting Do 502? How did you make that? Do you make that distinction?
We really don't make the distinction. The people that know that they're supporting Louisville Public Media, but the Do 502 person that's supporting Do 502
may not know.
They may not know, and I don't think that they actually care. I don't mean that glibly. I just think this is a thing that they love and that they trust, and they want to support this thing. We do market it a little bit differently. Like Do 502 has their own separate month where we push membership out. It's June because Ted found out that's when everybody's at Do 502 for something more than often. Summertime.
Got to get out.
Yes.
How about Rachel? Is that the same case for the DCist? Do they know it's just? Do they just love the DCist and they don't care? Do you make the distinction, or that this is like supporting public radio?
Yeah, this is definitely part of the conversation that we still have, particularly because we only launched to the public recently. And there's a certain number of people that still don't know that we were acquired by WMU, that they get a surprise when they find out and they're like, oh, cool. So we have them. We have people that have been following since we were relaunched. And we certainly do get a couple of questions about, like, hey, why? And the argument, the sales pitch that we give is that we're a distinctive editorial team. We are, a product unto itself, and by supporting us, you're supporting DCist, and we're seeing success with that, and we're seeing people really understand that once we explain it. We have it in our FAQs, and I think down the line, there's a real opportunity that we see for having, like, a super member, somebody who's a member of both, and maybe there's some sort of, benefit to doing that. But for now, we're it's a different product, and I think that people really either understand that implicitly or explicitly.
What advice would you give to everybody out here and on that live stream who are watching us about how to begin the process of spinning off a new brand within a legacy media organization? What's like the one thing that people should either do or not do or know?
I got one. Write up a one-sheeter. I did this sort of like casually when we first got to WMU. I was like, oh, let me just like quickly explain what this is. I thought everybody would know what it was. And the number of times I've distributed that one-sheeter internally and sort of now an external version, I can't begin to tell you. People don't want to read your 10-page document. They want to know quickly, snappily, like the headline news about whatever it is that you're doing. And I found it to be a really effective tool. Sort of a corollary to that, we're just about to do this now, is we're going to publish a public-facing mission statement for the site, which I think can also be really helpful in terms of clarity of purpose.
Lisa?
I would say, yeah, get your ducks in a row. Make sure that you know that you have the backing of your upper management team first and foremost, and that trickles down to all the other teams within your own building, so that no one's caught off guard, no one is surprised. We were surprised when we got our hands on this thing, so we had to grapple with a lot, and we had deadlines, so it had to be done quickly, and things like outward-facing websites, those are not things I can create. I need a team to help me do that, to help me even speak the language. And so catching my digital team off guard is not a thing I wanted to do at all. I want them on my side. So yeah, I'd say get your ducks in a row, make sure everyone is well educated before you start assigning tasks to them.
How about you, Tracy?
That's, yes,
She seconds that.
yes, ditto.
For a long time, call letters seemed to be the anathema to branding. Lately, they seem to be coming back into style. Is that the case? And if yes, why?
Wow.
Well, we're grappling with what we call this network of ours. It has initials, CPRN. It stands currently for Capital Public Radio Network. After working with some of the folks here at BizLab, we discovered that is less meaningful outside of California, and California seems the obvious. It's still CPRN. Unfortunately, it looks like there's already an association called that, so we have a lot of URLs, domain names that are reserved for us as we plot our way through that. But we want it to make sense immediately. You know, we're talking about 15 seconds of impact. Right. It has to be an impactful name too. So while it wouldn't be call letters, we're still looking at keeping CPRN in some way, shape, or form.
And you have affiliates in Oregon, correct? Is it in Nevada, or you have?
There are repeater stations in Oregon and in Nevada, and we're not able to, call it everything all at once.
Right.
California seems the best, and those are border stations, so we talk about that when we explain.
Next question. Age-wise, sounds like stations are making headway. How successful are each of you capturing a more diverse audience? Any clues to what is working? That's a good question.
Well, we were just doing research on our classical music station, and we had a new Nielsen report, and what we found out, and we were really surprised about this, the largest segment of the classical music audience was 18 to 24 years old.
Whoa.
We have no idea why. And it was more, and when you see things like that, I was wondering, is this a blip? Is this just maybe young people are just tired of what's happening in the news and are going to something that's a little calmer, more peaceful? And I'm not in marketing, I'm in underwriting, so it's hard to know the answer to that question, really.
Rachel, what about you?
This is such an important question. Loosely, I can say that I know that WMU has made a lot of headway actually in this area, and this is one of them. I mentioned this earlier. It's one of the most frustrating things is that I have good data about almost every question except for this one, because Google Analytics doesn't give it to you, so you really have to do surveying or some other form of polling to really understand this, and we haven't done it yet. We've been so focused on sort of getting everything back up and running that I actually don't even know what the benchmark is. But I have seen sort of some of the success at WMU, and I think that fundamentally that this comes down to what kind of coverage you're providing. And this, one of the things that I've been thinking about in part to answer this question is how can we sort of shift our coverage in order to attract a more diverse audience. And one of the ways that we're just about to do this year is we applied for to host 2 journalists through Report for America, and they're going to be focused on wards east of the Anacostia River, with the goal of really bringing in new audiences who we suspect are not reading right now, but we actually don't know the answer to that, and I wouldn't be surprised if our suspicions are wrong. I think that we do capture like quite a wide array of the city. I just don't have hard data to give, but I think that WMU has shown success in terms of really covering different issues, different geographies that have brought in a more diverse audience.
How do you overcome power and politics of different departments in silos within an organization? I think we all have to deal with this at some point.
Yeah, I think we do too. And you have to start by communicating, and I wish overcome is a strong word, but we have, I think, probably all learned how to work within the parameters of such things as power and politics of different departments. If you have, in our experience now with this project, if we have, and we do, the support of our management team, I used the term before, that trickle down is ever so helpful. Still, we did go to a person we thought had the authority to make a decision unilaterally and found out that we were wrong in not uncertain terms. So when that happened, all we could do was backpedal a little bit and say, yes, we understand, and here's how we set it up. This is why, we did it this way. We clearly were in error in so doing, and let's make it right. And that seemed to work just fine. Understanding, communication.
Do you commingle your various brands' users in the same member database? And any lessons learned about segregating them or cross-promoting across brands?
I had to look out to Ellen, who knows the answer to that, and she said, we do that.
So I have a story about this one.
Okay.
We didn't want to. We wanted to use a off-the-shelf membership tool. There are a couple of them out there. Memberful is a really well-known one, but we were looking at Pico in large part because it offered a suite of marketing tools connected to the site, so we could be targeting users based on their behaviors, which felt really important to us. But ultimately, for a lot of reasons related to the last question, we couldn't do that. And so we are commingling our members, and it's had some negative effects. We had recently a woman who donated to us received her swag, whatever it was, addressed to her husband. Yes, whoever gasped, that's the correct response, which was a result of the way that the system had been set up. So there is quite a bit of danger in that. We've, in general, really kept things separate, but are looking actually to the way that others have done this. It's my understanding that Gothamist and WNYC are cross-promoting to actually like really great success, and so that's something that we're going to be investigating in a little bit more detail because we were really worried about doing some harm there.
Thank you so much.
I am at WAMU and DCist and have been working with BizLabs on their membership program. So WAMU acquired DCist after all of the DNA info sites were shut down back in 2017, and WNYC worked to help us get them and then distribute them to their respective public radio stations. So DCist was a known and really loved digital news site. We heard from the community how sad they were when DCist disappeared. We saw a real outpouring of support. So we launched a Kickstarter campaign and brought DCist back thanks to crowdfunding. And because of that, we saw that there was a real opportunity to have a membership program that was unique and distinct to the product. So we worked with BizLabs to do some research to figure out what it was that the community wanted. we really wanted to build something that involved our audience in a way that we were like, we don't really know what this should be. We want to see what you want. We conducted some surveys in terms of to figure out what people wanted to see in terms of our content, and then we also conducted some surveys to figure out what sort of things would interest people for membership. We also, like Sarah said, brought people in for some focus groups and themed them around Valentine's Day. These were really, really loyal fans who loved DCist, and we wanted to understand their behaviors, what it was they loved about the site. Having people write love letters was a very personal and intimate thing. We were a little hesitant to do it, but we really saw people open up and share their relationship with DCist, how they first met the site, how their behavior and usage changed over time with it, and what their hopes and dreams were for the future with DCist. From there, we decided that we were going to be launching the program in beta. We had some issues around figuring out what technology we could launch the program on. We were really excited about doing something that was digitally focused, and because public radio has the benefit of having the giant megaphone that is being on the radio telling people to donate, we knew that our readers were interacting with our site, and we wanted to figure out how to leverage our site to be that same megaphone that encourages people to donate. So while we were figuring out technology, we decided to roll out in beta. We invited our 1,500 Kickstarter backers to join on as the very first members, and we sort of said, we're figuring this out. Will you join us and let us know what's working, what's not working, give us your feedback. We're going to be testing some things. So over those 3 months, we converted 10% of our list, and had 150 beta members who provided a lot of feedback. We A/B tested things like thank you gifts, if we could run the membership program sustaining only, which we saw a really positive response, and over 90% of people joined as sustainers. So we have rolled out our program as a sustaining only membership. And we also wanted to see the role that event invites played on conversion. We saw that it played a significant one. So we have now launched our membership program. It launched on November 1st. We have a goal of having 500 members by the end of the year. And as of yesterday, we are 87% of the way there. We still have some end of year emails to go out. So it's been really exciting. We are still accepting one-time gifts, but they don't equate membership, and we're seeing that that's really paying off. The average sustaining membership gift is $129, whereas the average one-time gift is around $58. So we're really seeing, and we have 436 members currently, and 90 people have chosen to give one time and are okay not being members. So we're seeing really positive results and are excited to continue growing the program.
I'm Kelly Morrison from Capital Public Radio. Our problem statement is that we had access to a network of radio stations throughout the state of California who accepted, thank you, who took our content, our Capital Bureau content, in exchange they provided us with 10, 15-second underwriting messages on each of the radio stations. So it's been around since about 2012, and it generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. But over the last couple of years, it's literally, it no longer brings in any revenue of any kind, but we're still providing the stations with the content. So our challenge was, how can we restart and reinvent the network and get it back kind of to what its glory was several years ago? So through our discovery and research, we did a couple of different things. First off, because we had never had access to the network before, we had to really kind of start from the beginning. So we pulled all of the contracts, first and foremost, to make sure that the people that we were listing that were actually members and part of the network were in fact part of the network. We had to take a look at what the offerings were to ensure the fact that the offerings were the same across the entire cluster of radio stations. So meaning Monday through Sunday, the avails were available for underwriting, or whether it was Monday through Friday. So what we found was the bulk of them were in fact Monday through Friday, with I think an exception of one or two. So from there, we also had to update the contacts. Some of the contacts are really, really old, and some of the people didn't even work there anymore. So we put all of that information together. Then we had to interview prospects. So what we wanted to find out, we went out into the community and we talked to different decision makers who place statewide buys. And we talked to them a little bit about whether or not, first and foremost, are you even familiar with NPR and the value of associating with it? Secondly, we had to take a look at whether or not they'd be interested in a statewide network. And the most important aspect of that was currently the only way you could purchase the network was the state entirely. And we could see that that wasn't working because revenue had dwindled to nothing. So we talked to them about the way in which they would want to buy the state of California. Would it be beneficial to them to be able to buy it just in the central region, or would you only be interested in the Northern California region, or would you only be interested in the Southern California region, and would that be of value to you to be able to purchase it that way? So we gathered that information so that we could continue to build it out. One of the most important things was that we didn't know what the process was on the back end. So we had to figure out if we were to allow them to buy these 50 radio stations across the state of California and let them buy it the way that they wanted to over a 2-week period of time or a 3-week period of time or 4, whatever geographically where it would be, we would have to manage that inventory. And not having access to that back-end information at those radio stations, we had to figure out a way to come up with a way to manage inventory, to make sure that the messaging got out and was correct across all the platforms. So from there, we built out the experiment phase. So we put together a real quick presentation that really just kind of mapped out the geography. And we went out and tested it. We went out and actually talked to some of these buyers, talked to them about the geography and how we were going to put it together. And what we found is that they were very excited about the fact that we were going to allow them to buy either the northern region of the state, which would be like from Sacramento up to the Oregon border, or whether or not they could buy the central region of the state, which is really kind of up the Central Valley, up through Fresno on your way into Los Angeles, or the southern part of the state, which would be Los Angeles kind of pushing back up, I believe, up until Mexico. So we put all of that together. They were very interested in that. We met with the prospective buyers. From there, we also isolated a couple of different software programs that could help us manage the information on the back end, as well as we bought into a company called Sales Genie, which would allow us to very specifically find those marketing directors or those decision makers within those corporations that would probably be most interested in purchasing the state of California. And we named this new presentation 15 Seconds of Impact. So that is a shout out to Mr. Freeman back there. And we're going to actually have the proposal. We had to build out a forward-facing website. So we really have started from scratch. And we've really built this out to where we're hoping that it's going to be seen as a very viable division of Capital Public Radio. And we're still in the process of naming it. We don't know what we're going to name it yet. So in conclusion, what we've been able to do since, I think, June or July of this year is we've got in another, I think we brought in $68,000 in fundraising. We're budgeting for about $200,000 in its first year. This was a platform that our company literally generated hundreds of thousands of dollars from, but the unfortunate thing was that it was from one client. So as that client kind of dwindled, nobody was going out and presenting the network. So we've really kind of turned it into a real entity. And this year so far, we've got about $104,000 in money pending. So most of the people that used it in our experiment phase are very interested in using it again.
My name is Tracy Karem. I'm with Louisville Public Media. And if you're not familiar with Louisville Public Media, we have 3 radio stations under one roof and a Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting and DO 502, which is what we centered our experiments around. DO 502 had been in the market since 2017 when we decided to buy it. And to give you a little background on DO 502, it is a calendar listing site, so you can go there every day to see what's going on in the city. People can put their events up there for free, and we also create content, things like where to go have brunch, dog-friendly bars. where to go hike, things like that. Our issue was incorporating Do 502, which was a for-profit before we bought it, into the Louisville Public Media family. What did that look like to bring it into Louisville Public Media, and how could we make it sustainable? We wanted to experiment around creating an event series with Do 502, and what we needed to discover, which Sarah talked about a little bit, is would they come to Do 502 events? Could we get them to pay to come to events? Because we had a history of having all of our events pretty much for free, open to the public. Could we get sponsors? And could we leverage a membership program as a means to convert people who come to the site into members? For the research, we did not realize it was really a lot of work to do the research. We started by doing a survey of Louisville Public Media members to see if they even knew what Do 502 was. We sent the survey in our 3-station e-news, the e-newses. My cohort at the time and I then conducted intercept interviews at events that we were having. And as Sarah said, it did happen really quickly. We had a Louisville Music Awards where we interviewed people. WFPK, our music station, has a weekly live lunch, so we interviewed people coming to the live lunch. We also interviewed people at donor lunches that we were having at the time. So we did talk to a whole lot of people. Then we also did some in-depth phone interviews with people to get a little bit more background that we needed. And once in Boston, and Ted is amazing with aggregating data. He's so good. The main thing that we discovered is that there is a large part of the Do 502 audience that did not overlap with the Louisville Public Media audience, and we needed to start looking at this group of people a little bit separately to see what they wanted and needed. And we also discovered that they were not coming to Do 502 for anything sports related, which was really good knowledge because at the time we had a whole vertical dedicated to all things sports. So we have since gotten rid of that based on this information. And we also came up with, and Sarah talked about this too, some personas to help us as we market it and plan moving forward. We had Sloan, who was the avoid the lame at all cost. We had don't do anything. She is the hip person and wants to be where the new things are happening. The married working mother of 2, Veronica, and Justin, who is where's the party on Friday night? I just want to be where the party is. We ran experiments on 2 different tracks, events and email perks. We started the events with Firkin Friday, and as Sarah said, we turned that around in 1 week, 9 days. I do not recommend that. The miracle is this, we did manage to get it planned. We ran into some internal pushback. There were people that just weren't grasping the concept of this is just a small experiment. It's just we just want to do it and see if people will come. We finally got past all of that, and because of that, like Sarah said, the day before the event is when we marketed it. So we marketed it as a pop-up event. We had 35 people come. We were so excited. They did pay to be there, and the beautiful thing of that, it was a free place to come to. So we were so excited about that. And then we next partnered with a local donut shop on National Donut Day. The donut shop made a specific Do 502 donut, and we pushed the event out through Do 502 social media. We had a lot of people tell us they were there because they did see it on social media, and we got a new member that day. We've had since we've done our time with BizLab has been over, we've done a couple of more events and have gotten sponsorship dollars. We're so excited. And what we have learned is that the Do 502 audience will come to events, and they will pay to come to the events. And we're going to continue to figure out ways to convert the people that come to the events into members. For the email perks during that time, we experimented. There was a 1-month period where we just sent Do 502 people newsletters to try to get them to convert them to members. And we experimented with language, discount codes, pre-sale codes, and we learned that pre-sale codes actually seem to work better than discounts. And we now have 70 members currently. The majority of those are sustainers, so we're very excited. So going forward, the team members got some training with, she's gone now, with the red thread method. So we worked on a presentation that we presented to senior leadership. They approved us having a Do 502 event series in 2020. So we were so excited about that. Taja McQueen, who was my cohort through most of this, though, has since left the organization. So I was a little concerned about what was going to happen moving forward, but we had a meeting last week, our marketing manager and the director of Do 502, and we've started planning some events for 2020. The first, which we're thinking about for Valentine's Day, is to go to a local pet shelter and like after hours so people can meet the dogs and the cats and hopefully get some adoptions. And then we're having a meeting next week to talk about how we're going to continue doing events moving forward. Thank you very much.